Anxiety is Not Me. Anxiety is Not Me is a sacred space where you will be guided to meet your innermost self for the very first time. She will awaken, evolve, and rise to new depths of unpaved territory, accepting herself wholly. I am your host, Madison Schrader. When I began my journey of healing and rediscovery of myself, I felt extremely isolated. So through the power of speech, I want to create a community where people can turn to for guidance, for support, and for real life, raw experiences. So it is an absolute pleasure to have Cass here with me today, sharing not only her wisdom and gifts, but also her personal story in this sacred space. Connecting with new people, new ideas, new outlooks, it's what it's all about, and it's just incredible. When I started really manifesting the nitty-gritty of this, I asked for the people who needed me to be able to find me. And I believe that I am being connected to those that are meant to impact you guys, the ones that are tuning in a positive and loving way. Okay, so Cass, I love astrology and have always taken such an interest in it. But what I didn't realize until recently is how much it can support me in raising my children. I'm sure it's probably not a concept that a lot of people are actually familiar with. So I guess to start off with, are you able to explain to us what is astrological parenting?
Yeah, sure. So for me, astrological parenting is about, understanding your children thoroughly, but also understanding yourself. So, for example, knowing your child's, sun sign, moon sign, and ascendant sign, rising sign, sorry, it helps you understand, how they handle their emotions, how, they could be displaying they're quite a fun, happy child, but then, their emotion side could be completely different. So I think knowing, how your children respond to things will help with, being able to assist them in life and, helping them, targeting their strength and, helping them in their challenging, like things that they challenge with. So I think it's super important to know how you are as a person, but then also knowing how to, I guess, best interact with your child based on, their traits within their signs.
And I guess this is where we start to see that we're all different and we're all special and we're all unique. And we see that from a very young age. Even if two children have the same parents and grow up in the same environments and are exposed to the same things, they are totally different from one another, which means that sometimes they will need to be disciplined in different ways. My kids, for an example, are total opposites. They get along so well, and I am so blessed to see their beautiful relationship with one another, but they couldn't be more different to each other. And when I discipline my daughter, the same techniques and the same strategies that are in place for her life, I can't just cross over to my son's life because they don't work for him. And it took me a really long time, I think, to get to the point of realizing, okay, hang on, he's a different person. So I have to come from a different angle and a different approach for him. I had him 2.5 years after I had my daughter. So I went into his birth thinking, well, I've been a parent for 2.5 years, so I know how to do this. And then he came out and just threw all of that out the window. He is my wild child. And to meet his emotional needs, I need to come from a very different place as to what I do with my daughter. And I see that now. It's all in their charts. So when we are starting to explore our children's charts, are there any particular areas that are best to focus on first?
Yeah, I think it is important because you've got some, so like sort of touch base on with the moon sign, I think being really aware of how they handle their emotions. So for example, my middle child, Mateo, he is actually, no, I'll go with Maddie. Maddie's probably a bit more easy to explain. His moon sign's Leo, so he's quite a strong. He likes to show that he's the leader. He's needs that. He also needs to feel like he's the one in charge, I guess you would say. But then he's also needing that loving kind of, because he's so loving, he needs that love back. So knowing that whenever he's sort of acting out or being all like, no, I'm not doing this, by giving him the love and affection that he needs and that sort of in like that direct attention, I can channel that energy that he's currently holding and go, okay, that's what's wrong right now. You're actually needing this. You're not trying to be in control or anything like that. You're actually just showing me that you need some one-on-one time, and then I'll sort of set up a play date to have that one-on-one time, and then the next day he's fine. He's absolutely fine.
So when we're exploring soul purpose, that's not something that you get given on your 18th birthday. You're an adult now, so here's your destiny. It's something that you're born with. You are born into this lifetime with work to do. So I guess what I want to know is how can we use the information that's in our children's charts to aid them in having the best possible start to nurture them in the best possible way for them individually so they can do the work that they're here set out to do.
So with Matthew, I guess he's in his chart, he's very, he's got quite an engineering mind. He's very, with maths, he's like really, really good, which is a part of being an Aquarius. So I do encourage, so in his room, he's got like, I put like mathematic charts up. I've encouraged his strengths. Yes, I'm aware with his reading, obviously that's not his strength, but because it's a part of his chart, I do want to push him still to excel in that area and let him do things. Like I'm not big on technology or anything like letting kids do that, but I think to some extent, if that's what's a part of their, I guess, their birth chart, and that's what I feel he's here to be, is a part of his what's going to benefit him in the future, then I'm still going to allow for those things. Like, so there's games that are you've got to use your mind, and you're very, you got to have that sort of engineering kind of mind to figure it out. Or like, for example, I don't know if you've seen it. What are those? There's those building blocks. Like he's got that sort of mind that he will sit there and build things for ages. And for him, using his hands, it's so good for him mentally, but then also he's using his brain to create these things. And I think, in future, like he might want to get into architecture or something like that. And by doing this at such a young age and encouraging that as his strength, then, in future that's going to help him because he's already started perfecting that skill at such a young age. Whereas with Matteo, I wouldn't give that to him because that's not, he's only 2, but he's also, I know that's not, he's more of a curious sort of active out there kind of personality. So, I'll, encourage him to get outside and, do more of explaining plants and looking at rocks and that kind of stuff. So even though Maddie does have that sort of like scientific brain, he's more sit down, use his hands, whereas Matteo is more curious, go play, chatty, like that's the Gemini in him. So he's just out there, just completely out there.
I think it's so important that we give children an equal chance to have a go at anything that life has to offer. But I definitely understand where you're coming from and can appreciate that. For example, if I was to give my kids a long list of a wide range of activities, I know exactly which ones my daughter is going to gravitate to and which ones my son will gravitate to. And I can tell you they will not be the same ones. And I think it's really important to encourage them to try those other ones that may not feel so easy and come so naturally to them, but then definitely to encourage them to continue to grow and expand on the ones that they do love and that do come naturally and feel the most comfortable to them. Now, this is something that I worry a lot about, and it's very close to my heart, and I feel very strongly about. And that is not putting our own fears onto our children. So, this is something that I work really closely on. I do not want my kids to fear the same things that I do just because they see that I fear them. Can we use our children's charts to help assist us in avoiding giving them the fears that we possess in our lives?
So I think obviously the self-awareness is a big thing, and just, knowing, being full aware of your triggers and your fears and everything like that. I think that's massive. And how you as a person and how you, I guess, express those emotions. So obviously knowing your own moon sign and knowing how you express things can make you aware of, you know, how your children will witness that. So I think firstly being open with your kids is super important, but then also knowing how your child is also important to how what you can and can't explain. So obviously I've got my two youngest who are 10 months and 2 years. I can't explain these things to them. But having my eldest son, the way having that Leo in his chart and knowing that he doesn't need that sense of security because he's got that strong personality in terms of, like, he's sort of, I guess, in our house, he's the man of the house. And that fits so perfectly for him being, a Leo moon. Whereas we've got Matteo, who is a Taurus moon, and he needs that security. He needs that. So I wouldn't have those when I'm talking to him. If I'm, say, for example, my fear is of being, like, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And, I sometimes worry about not being, as a single mum, not being, the best I can be and giving all my children what they need. But I could explain that to my son, who was my oldest, being the fact that he is a Leo as his moon sign, because I know that he will understand it. But then I'll also have to tell him in a loving way, not like in an emotional way where I'm like all erratic and whatnot. It would be more in a loving, like, because he needs that love too. So it would be more just explaining in a loving way, like, mummy's sort of a bit flat today because, I'm just a bit overwhelmed with everything, and I want to make sure all you kids get the best. Whereas with Matteo, I probably wouldn't have those conversations with him. I'd just be like, I just want to give you the best, sort of thing. I wouldn't really explain it in detail because he sort of would feel that security that I'm okay, and that, I guess, even if I was to explain it to him, I would start off by saying, just so you know, everything's okay. Mum's fine. I'm just having one of my days. Whereas, I guess with Maddie, it would be more like in a more gentle, I would explain it in more depth because I knew he could handle that information.
That's amazing, isn't it? So by knowing how they witness things and how they are going to absorb certain situations, we can make sure that we're giving them all that they need, but from the place that they need it. So that is really, really insightful. And I really appreciate you using your children as an example. I'm sure that this will resonate with a lot of people. So thank you. Are there any core planets that we should be focusing on for our children?
I think Mercury is a big one, obviously, because it's a planet of communication. And that's why I find that, I think it's so important to be aware of when, Mercury does go in retrograde, because it's, you can feel it. It's also, that's when maybe there might be miscommunications in the house or misunderstandings. So focusing on that planet, I think, is big because, it does enhance, depending on where it is and which house it's in at the moment, it does really affect them with their star sign too. So I think, keeping, like, for example, this year we've got like four Mercury retrogrades, which is going to be bumpy but good. But yeah, I definitely think that's a big one to focus on.
Now, you've just mentioned retrograde planets. Are you able to explain what exactly these are and how they affect us?
When a planet goes retrograde, I know people say in retrograde, but basically it's retrograde. It gives the illusion that it's going backwards, but it's not actually going backwards. So I don't know how to explain it the best way, but it's sort of loose. So when you've got the planets that go around the sun constantly, it sort of comes around down lower and it does a loop. So it's sort of, it's not going backwards, it just gives the illusion it is. So when that happens, it sort of forces us to what I like, I guess the way I see it is sort of return, sort of revise, just because if you think about it, when it loops, you sort of are returning. So that's the way I sort of like to think about it. And, you know, are you on the right path? It forces us to really reevaluate. So for me, it's like the retrograde, it's like return, revitalize, reevaluate your life and everything like that. It really forces us to. And that's why when, you know, with Mercury retrograde, it can be such a, because the planet is probably is the fastest planet. That's why we have so many Mercury retrogrades. And it being the planet of communication, it really forces us to reevaluate our situations. And we do have these misunderstandings or miscommunications because, you know, if everything went as planned, you don't find errors. You know what I mean? So having that happen, you get these little speed bumps and you're like, oh, okay, like back to the drawing board, like how can we fix this or how can we go on the right path?
Is there anything in particular we should or shouldn't be doing at these points in time? How can we best utilize these points in time?
So big decisions, so signing contracts or like, you know, making drastic life changes or changing your job or your career. I don't recommend doing it at the point of the retrograde. Yes, that's maybe when something happens that forces you to think that way. But I think the fact that it's forcing you to think that way is you reevaluating a situation, because that planet might be causing some speed bumps in your current situation, but it might be there to help you grow. It's not helping you to go, okay, I need to quit my job or I need to drastically change what I'm doing. It's there to help you reevaluate what you're doing. Can I be, you know, doing better things in this role to avoid having these complications? So it's not to really push you into a different direction. It's just to sort of, it definitely can put you on a different path, but it's best to wait for the retrograde to end and then get all this information that you've sort of acknowledged and realized and then make the decision to do it, because, you know, you don't want to be in that mindset where everything's going wrong and you make a decision in that mindset. You want to make a decision when everything's going right, but you've acknowledged all these different areas that you've just been through.
Absolutely. So to not use that retrograde energy to make any spur of the moment decisions, rather than just gathering all your information and then once the retrograde has finished, then make the best decision moving forward. Now, I know that you are a big believer in affirmations and crystals as well. So if you're comfortable, are you able to tell us how integrating these practices, astrology, affirmations, crystals, helps to keep you and your kids balanced? Because from what you have told me when we first connected, it just sounds so inspirational.
So this is like, I guess, my my kryptonite. This is my biggest thing, really. So I'm big on crystals, big on affirmations. So I sort of have Affirmation Sunday. So we all, obviously my two youngest can't speak, but I speak to them when I put them to bed. It's just like a day, it's like a weekly ritual, because obviously with day to day, you're busy, you know, you neglect these sort of areas. So like when I put Mariah to bed, I'll be like, you're beautiful, you're strong, you're happy, you're healthy. And same with Mateo. So that's what I'll say to him when I put him to bed. Whereas Maddie, he's got his 5 affirmations he has to do. So, you know, one of the biggest ones he always does is I'm a star. Like that's, and for him, that's big. Like, you know, even having Leo as his emotional, as his moon sign, he's out there, you know, and I think it really encourages him to grow into that.
Oh my gosh, Affirmation Sunday. I love it. It sounds so good. And utilizing bedtime is another great suggestion. I think a lot of people are time poor and it's very easy to make excuses and say, I don't have time to implement this practice into my daily life. But it only takes a few minutes and it can be so beneficial to living life and catering for the different ages of your kids, by still getting them to practice affirmations, but in different ways depending on their age. So whether it's you saying it for them and them hearing it, and as they get older, they develop their own practice and have to take over saying it themselves. This is wonderful.
Even during the week, if he says something negative, like, sometimes he's like, oh, I'm not good enough, which he actually doesn't do that anymore. When he first started at school, he'd be like, oh, I'm so, I can't get this, especially, during COVID, being at home, having to get their homework and whatnot. I got to see it more, like him being, how he reacts to not being able to answer a question. And so whenever he would do that, as his like punishment, I would be like, well, if you say one negative, you have to say 5 affirmations of how good you are. And then it sort of turns into us sort of reconnecting. He has a giggle because he sort of feels silly. But then it's, and then I'll also, force him to smile. I'll be like, stop what you're doing and smile. And even when he's grumpy, I'll be like, you just turn around. I don't have to see you. Put your hands on your mouth. I don't care, but I just want you to physically smile and just, feel it. And it always works because he starts to giggle because he feels so silly, but then he's happy again.
Oh, Cass, these ideas are just so beautiful, and I'm so grateful for you sharing them. Thank you.
And then with the crystals, so each of them have crystals in their room based on their moon sign. So this, for me, it's because obviously children, they don't quite understand their emotions yet. And I think being able to complement their moon signs while they're sleeping can really help. So with Maddie, he's being Leo, I've got amethyst in his room. And with Mateo being Taurus, who need love, I've got rose quartz. So I put them in their rooms, but then any entrances to my house, I have selenite above the door frame just to cleanse energies. So then I'm not, any energies they bring from school, they sort of like, for me, when they walk through the door, they leave the energies outside. Me, for work, I leave my work energies outside. Not always, it doesn't always work, but they're little things like even cleansing the house. I like to cleanse the house so it's got good energy, so they come home and they're happy. They don't come into a house that's, being a single mom of 3 kids, it's chaotic. So I, when I put them all to bed, like once a week, I only cleanse the house, and do it every night, but I just sort of, when they're all asleep, I check on each of them, like go into their rooms, just, give them some love, I guess. And, just even if sometimes they're a little bit, I can see some changes, or I feel like, for example, Mateo, sometimes he'll need, if he's really restless, I'll put some amethyst in his pillowcase, and then that will help just ease him a little bit. If Maddie's been a little bit the same, like he can't switch off, I'll put some halide in his pillowcase because that will stop his overactive mind, which is a little bit how he can be. So, knowing, that's why I love knowing a little bit about their charts. Like there's so much to know. Like it's, you could study it all day long, but having that combined with the crystals, it really, really helps, helps their emotional state as well as their, helping them grow. Like with Matthew, he's got citrine. That helps him. So how you've got like, I guess for Aquarius, they're very outgoing people, but then they're also very, they can get a bit anxious easy. And so by putting citrine in his room, I'm encouraging that the positive of his birth chart, not the negative. So I'm trying to override them with good energy versus just whatever.
Wow. I love the power of crystals, and I love how you have brought it back to an astrology chart. So thank you so much for being vulnerable with us and sharing your story, Cass.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Now I want you to repeat after me. I am strong. I am courageous. I am brave. I am beautiful. I am my authentic, unique being because I am here with a purpose. Anxiety is Not Me is a place for all of us to share and to feel inclusive. If you would like to share your story, please reach out to me, sending you energy of love and peace as you become more aware of your inner light with every breath.